behind the crown, Rolex. The name itself carries weight. It isn't just a brand, it's a legend. But what truly goes on behind the closed, steel-reinforced doors of this Swiss watchmaking powerhouse? Most people will never know. Rolex doesn't do factory tours. They don't hand out brochures with behind-the-scenes photos. And yet, that mystique is part of what makes a Rolex so magnetic. For a company so rooted in craftsmanship, precision, and tradition, Rolex has carefully built an empire on exclusivity. They don't advertise how they do things, they simply let the product speak. But if given the rare chance to peek behind that curtain, what would actually be seen? Welcome to the Fortress, Rolex headquarters. The Rolex headquarters in Geneva is more than just an office building. It's a fortress of innovation wrapped in mystery. Thick green glass panels reflect the Alps, but inside, time doesn't just tick. It transforms. Security is tight, not just the show your badge kind of tight. This is fingerprint scanner, armored truck, restricted zone kind of tight. Even most employees aren't allowed to visit other Rolex facilities outside of their own department. And it's not just about secrecy for the sake of drama. It's about control. Rolex controls every detail, every material, and every process. Outsiders, not welcome. Even journalists have been denied access for decades. Why? Because in a world filled with mass production, Rolex still treats each timepiece as an individual creation. Every link, every dial, every movement deserves privacy until perfection is achieved. Craftsmanship. First, the Rolex philosophy. Rolex doesn't make watches, they sculpt icons. The way the company approaches craftsmanship is closer to artistry than assembly. This isn't just about fitting tiny gears into tiny cases, it's about combining precision engineering with unshakable discipline. Inside, rows of watchmakers work under bright, natural light with surgical focus. Many have backgrounds in micromechanics or even medical instrument repair. Their training is rigorous, often taking years before a single screw is turned without supervision. Each movement is treated like a living organism. One mistake, one fingerprint, one dust particle, and the entire process resets. This isn't just quality control, it's an obsession, but it's also quiet, calm, almost meditative. The hum of machines, the click of loop-covered eyes moving toward another pinion, the silence between adjustments. It feels more like a symphony rehearsal than a factory. Digging deeper, gold, steel, and the stuff of legends. Let's talk about materials, because Rolex doesn't just buy metals, it makes them. That's right, most people don't know this, but Rolex operates its own foundry. And yes, it's exactly as intense as it sounds. Take gold, for example. Rolex produces its own 18-karat gold alloys, yellow, white, and even their proprietary Everose gold. These aren't off-the-shelf materials. They're forged, melted, and refined within Rolex walls to exact specifications. Why? Because purity alone isn't enough. Durability, hue, polish retention, every element matters. And then there's oyster steel, a 904L stainless steel that's harder, shinier, and more corrosion-resistant than the standard 316L steel used by other watchmakers. It's so tough that special tools had to be designed just to work with it. Rolex didn't just want premium materials, they wanted control. Full, unbreakable, obsessive control. Forging time inside the Gold Lab. The Gold Lab isn't a fairy tale. It's a gleaming, high-security workspace where molten metal meets science. Staffed by trained metallurgists and engineers, this lab operates more like a NASA project than a watch factory. Every bar of gold poured is analyzed, measured, and remeasured. Even the tiniest impurity won't escape detection. Rolex doesn't buy external gold because no external gold meets their standards. Once the gold is cast, it's shaped into rods, wires, plates, whatever form is needed for the specific parts. Cases, bezels, bracelet links, even tiny crown logos are born here. That's not just attention to detail, that's detail made into religion. Precision in motion, engineering the movements. The real heartbeat of any Rolex lies in its movement, the intricate dance of springs, gears, and jewels that power the hands across a dial. Rolex movements are crafted with such precision that they often exceed chronometer standards before even reaching official testing. That's why the company eventually created its own superlative chronometer certification, because the industry standard simply wasn't enough. At this stage, engineers use both machine-assisted processes and hand finishing. Computerized systems ensure consistent spacing and torque values, while experienced technicians inspect each assembly by eye. The balance wheel, the most delicate and essential component, is installed last, and only after a battery of tests. The slightest imbalance can throw off the accuracy by minutes over time, and Rolex refuses to accept minutes. Only seconds matter here. Human hands in a robotic world. Even though Rolex uses some of the most advanced robotics in Swiss watchmaking, people still run the show. Assembly lines are guided by trained hands, not automated arms. The robots, they handle storage, sorting, and some repetitive assembly tasks. Think of them as assistants, not replacements. Inside the labs, watchmakers use tweezers, microscopes, and a lifetime of training to handle components smaller than a sesame seed. Each piece is meticulously placed, each part perfectly aligned. The dial itself, applied by hand, under a lens, with anti-static gloves. If a single luminous marker is off by a hair, it's rejected. No second chances. There's a kind of poetry in that discipline. Precision without compromise. Technology without over-reliance. Extreme testing. Waterproof, shockproof, and beyond. Every Rolex watch is tested, not just once, not just lightly, but with a level of scrutiny that would make most consumer electronics blush. Waterproofing? It's not just a splash test. Cases are submerged in pressurized tanks, and some models like the Submariner or Deep Sea undergo simulated deep sea dives. Shock resistance? Machines mimic daily wear and tear. Sudden movements, drops, wrist flicks, and even knocks against hard surfaces are all part of the test suite. Temperature extremes? You bet. These watches are exposed to both freezing and near-boiling environments to ensure performance in any climate. Timekeeping accuracy? Every movement is individually regulated, tested, and retested until it performs within -2 to +2 seconds per day. That's twice as strict as the industry standard. This is not marketing. This is obsession. Machines that assist, not replace. It's easy to assume that such precision requires automation, and in some areas that's true. But Rolex is surprisingly human-first in its approach. In the parts storage facility, robotic arms move with silent grace. Components are delivered in seconds with laser precision. But once they arrive, it's back to the human touch. Even polishing, a process that could be automated, is mostly done by hand. Why? Because machines don't understand beauty. They don't feel texture. They can't see a reflection and know when it's just right. And just right is the only finish Rolex accepts. Finishing touch, polishing to perfection. One of the most underrated aspects of Rolex watchmaking is polishing. It's not just about making something shiny. It's about consistency across dozens of different materials, surfaces, and angles. Each case and bracelet undergoes a multi-stage process. First, rough polishing to shape and smooth. Then finer grades of polishing paste are used, applied by hand with rotating wheels and years of skill. The result? A finish so flawless it almost looks wet under the light. Uniform, mirror-like, without distortion. And that's just the start. Edges are beveled, crown guards are sharpened, and every transition from brushed to polished surface is perfectly clean. No one sees the work behind the shine, but that's the point. Dial design. A story in every face. The dial isn't just a surface. It's a statement. Every Rolex dial is a canvas of exacting detail and understated elegance. Creating that clean, iconic face isn't as simple as stamping a circle and painting on markers. Each dial begins with a brass blank, which is then carefully cut, polished, and given its unique finish. Sunray, matte, lacquered, gem set, each texture requires different tools, different hands, and different eyes. The colors? They're not just dyed. They're chemically treated, layered with metallic particles, or electroplated to reflect light in very specific ways. That deep Rolex green, that champagne shimmer on a Datejust, that midnight blue of a submariner, all precisely formulated and often developed exclusively for Rolex. Our markers are applied one by one, often using white gold to avoid tarnishing over time. Even the tiny Rolex crown at 12 o'clock isn't mass-produced. It's crafted and aligned by hand. It's all about balance. Beauty meets legibility. Every dial must look iconic, instantly recognizable, and utterly timeless. Bracelets, engineering that wraps around the wrist. Bracelets aren't an afterthought, they're part of the experience. Whether it's the Oyster, Jubilee, or President style, each Rolex bracelet is built not just for looks, but for comfort and strength. Links are solid, not hollow. Screws are used for sizing instead of cheap pins. The clasp, a marvel of miniature engineering. Take the Oyster Lock clasp on a submariner. It includes a built-in safety catch, a fold-over mechanism, and a glide lock extension system that lets divers adjust it on the fly without tools. The Jubilee bracelet, known for its elegance, has a hidden crown clasp that clicks shut with satisfying precision. And it's not just about how it fits on day one, it's about how it feels 10 years later. Everything, down to the sound of the clasp snapping shut, is intentional. It's supposed to feel luxurious, solid, and complete. The assembly line that isn't. Here's where things get interesting. Unlike most modern manufacturers, Rolex doesn't use a traditional assembly line. There's no moving belt, no clock counting down tasks. Instead, each timepiece travels in custom-designed trays between departments. Carefully, silently, securely, and with each hand it passes through, another layer of care is added. A technician assembles the movement. A specialist checks the regulation. A case expert installs the dial and hands. Another team seals it shut. Every step is signed off, documented, and rechecked. No one is rushing, no one is guessing. There's an almost meditative rhythm to it. Because at Rolex, there's no such thing as mass production, just repeated perfection. Final checks, beyond quality control. At most companies, quality control happens at the end. At Rolex, it happens constantly. Throughout the build, each part is inspected, not just by machines, but by people. Magnifying glasses, UV lights, pressure chambers, nothing is off the table. Before a watch is allowed to leave, it's checked again. Case seals are tested, the bracelet is inspected for scratches, hands are examined for alignment. And then there's the timekeeping. Every watch is timed over several days in different positions and temperatures to ensure it meets that superlative chronometer standard. That's -2 + 2 seconds per day. Most luxury watches don't even come close. And if anything is off, even slightly, the whole thing is disassembled and started over. That's not just control, that's commitment. Chronometer status and superlative testing. Rolex watches aren't just accurate, they're proven accurate. Each movement is sent to the COSC, Contrôle Officiel Suisse des Chronomètres, an independent Swiss institute where it's tested over 15 days. Only movements that maintain precise timekeeping under multiple conditions get the chronometer certification. But Rolex doesn't stop there. Once those movements return, Rolex cases them, then tests them again, this time under real-world conditions. Fully assembled, waterproof, worn, adjusted. That's where the superlative comes in. It's not a buzzword, it's a promise. A Rolex that leaves the factory isn't just accurate, it's among the most accurate mechanical watches in the world. Packaging, a box worth keeping. The green box, you've seen it. You've probably even admired it in YouTube unboxings or jewelry store windows, but it's not just a box, it's part of the Rolex experience. The outer shell is a durable wave-patterned clamshell embossed with the golden crown. Inside, suede-like lining, color-matched cushions, and usually a booklet describing the specific model. Even the hang tags, green and red, aren't for show. One represents the COSC certification. The other, that superlative chronometer promise. It's subtle luxury. Packaging that signals this isn't just a purchase, it's a legacy. Distribution drama, why you can't just buy one. So, why is it so hard to get one? Walk into an authorized dealer and ask for a stainless steel Submariner or Daytona. Odds are you'll be laughed out. Politely, of course. because the demand far outweighs supply. Rolex produces over 1 million watches a year, but they control distribution like a fine art. Only select dealers get shipments, and even they don't know exactly what's coming or when. This creates scarcity, not artificial but strategic. Rolex isn't flooding the market, they're curating it. That's why buying one at retail often requires a relationship. And that's also why the secondary market is booming, with markups in the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. It's not just a watch, it's a hunt, a status symbol earned through patience or price. Spotting fakes, the battle against counterfeits. The higher the value, the bigger the target, and Rolex is the most counterfeited watch brand in the world, but no fake ever truly gets it right. The weight is off, the Cyclops lens doesn't magnify enough, the crown logo isn't aligned, the movement inside, often quartz, not mechanical. Rolex has dozens of tiny design elements that are hard to replicate. Laser-etched crown logos in the sapphire crystal, perfectly spaced text, engraved rehaut with serial numbers. And Rolex continues to innovate, not just in watches, but in anti-counterfeiting. Every detail, every feature is a fingerprint, unique, precise, impossible to fake entirely. Wearing a legacy, more than just timekeeping. Wearing a Rolex isn't just about telling time, it's about telling a story. It might be a milestone, graduation, promotion, anniversary. It might be a symbol of success, of craftsmanship, of taste. Rolex watches have been worn by presidents, deep-sea divers, explorers, race car drivers, and astronauts. Each model, Explorer, Submariner, Daytona, Datejust, carries a history, and it becomes personal. Scratches, memories, adjustments, all part of the journey. A Rolex isn't just owned, it's lived in. It can be passed down, restored, and worn again decades later, because it wasn't built for a moment. It was built for time itself. So after all that, why does Rolex still dominate? It's not about price, although they're expensive. It's not about scarcity, although they're hard to get. It's about something harder to define: discipline, legacy, unwavering control over quality, materials, production, and image. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, no changing direction every year. Rolex knows exactly what it is, and that confidence radiates from every timepiece. In a world that moves fast, Rolex still moves with intention. Every tick of the second hand echoes with over a century of history and innovation. And maybe that's what makes them so iconic, because while other brands chase trends, Rolex builds forever. If this deep dive into the world of Rolex pulled back the curtain in a way that intrigued, inspired, or amazed, then why stop here? Like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who's ever wondered what really goes into building the most iconic watches on Earth. There's more to discover, more stories to tell, and more timepieces waiting to be unlocked. Thanks for watching.